My cousin used my business as her personal ATM. Then learned I'd been recording every loan. The phone rang at 7:14 in the morning, right in the middle of running payroll, and I almost let it go to voicemail. I wish sometimes that I had. Ms. Reyes? This is Naomi from First Continental. We need to flag some irregular activity on your business account. I remember the sound of the mixer still running in the kitchen behind me, the smell of proofing dough, Teodoro's voice calling out an oven temperature to one of the new hires. Ordinary sounds. The sounds of a Tuesday. And underneath all of it, a small, cold certainty settling into my stomach like a stone dropped into still water. I already knew, before she said another word, exactly what she was going to tell me. Because I had built the spreadsheet myself. 11 days of nights, one careful row at a time. Every transfer, every just this once, every version of the same 4 words, delivered so warmly they almost didn't sound like a demand at all. Family takes care of family. My name is Dana Reyes. I'm 34 years old. I own Sweetgrass Bakery, 42 seats, a wholesale contract with 2 regional grocery chains, 11 employees whose mortgages and rent and grocery bills depend on me making good decisions with the numbers in that account. By the time this story is over, one decision I made, the decision to finally stop being quiet, will cost my cousin her marriage for a while. Her reputation at the firm she'd spent a decade building, and the one thing she'd never had to question before, that I would always, always be the easy one. But you need to understand who I was before that Tuesday morning phone call. Because I wasn't born someone who checks receipts. I was made into her, slowly, by people who needed me to be. If this is your first time here, welcome. I tell true stories about the quiet moment right before someone finally stops being quiet. Because I think there's nothing more powerful than watching a person who's been underestimated their whole life finally close the book on it, calmly, on their own terms. If that's the kind of story that speaks to you, stay with me. And if you want more of them waiting for you, go ahead and subscribe now, because there's always another one coming. I grew up the fixer of my family, and nobody ever sat me down and gave me that title. It just happened, the way water finds the lowest point in a room without anyone directing it there. My mother worked 2 jobs, days at a dental office, evenings doing the books for a friend's landscaping company, and my father left when I was 9, cleanly enough that I sometimes think the cruelest thing he did was not leave a mess behind for us to be angry about. Just an empty closet and a note on the kitchen table that my mother never let me read. My cousin Priya lived 2 streets over. Same age, same grade, raised practically as sisters by 2 mothers who were sisters themselves. But Priya was golden in a way I never quite managed to be bright, funny, effortlessly charming, the kind of person a room seemed to rearrange itself around without her even noticing it happening. Teachers loved her. Boys loved her. My own mother, if I'm honest, loved her a little more easily than she loved me, though she would never have said so, and I don't think she even knew it was true. By the time we were 14, I was the one helping her cram for the SAT she'd barely pass, the one covering her shift at the mall food court so she could sneak off with whichever boy she was seeing that month, the one lying smoothly to her mother about where she'd really been on a Friday night. I was good at it. I was good at being useful. I think, somewhere very early, I decided that being useful was the same thing as being loved, and nobody in my life ever corrected that math for me. Priya went to business school. I went to culinary school. And I remember the exact dinner table conversation where my aunt described my choice as cute Not unkind, just careless. The way you'd describe a hobby rather than a life. Everyone understood, without anyone saying it directly, that Priya's path was the serious one. The one with a real trajectory, and mine was the one you did until you found something more sensible. I opened Sweetgrass 8 years ago with $11,000 of savings I'd built penny by penny, working 2 jobs through culinary school, plus a small business loan I paid off 2 full years ahead of schedule. I built every wholesale relationship myself, cold calling regional buyers from my apartment kitchen table at 6 in the morning, before I'd even opened the shop for the day. Wearing the same cardigan for 3 years because I couldn't justify buying a new one. Nobody helped me build it. I want to say that clearly, once, before the rest of this story happens, because it matters, I built something real, with my own hands, out of almost nothing. And the moment it started to work, the moment Sweetgrass stopped being a risk and started being a business people, respected my family remembered, all at once, that I was the fixer. And fixers, apparently, don't retire. The first call came 3 years ago, on a Sunday evening while I was doing inventory in the walk-in, my breath fogging in the cold. Priya was crying real tears, I think, though I've had a long time since to wonder about that saying that she and her husband Marcus were $4,000 short on the down payment for their first house. Just $4,000. Just for 2 months. Just until her year-end bonus cleared. I said yes before she finished the sentence. That's the part I need you to sit with, because it explains everything that came after. I didn't ask for paperwork. I didn't ask for a repayment date in writing. I transferred the money directly from the business account rather than my personal savings, because it felt cleaner in the moment, one less step, one less inconvenience for her, and because some old, worn-smooth part of me still believed that families didn't need contracts between them, that asking for one would be its own kind of insult. 2 months passed. Then 4. I told myself I'd simply forgotten to follow up, the way you tell yourself you'll go to the dentist eventually. Then, at Thanksgiving that year, Priya mentioned almost as an aside, passing the cranberry sauce. Laughing about contractor delays that she and Marcus had just put a deposit down on a kitchen renovation. Quartz countertops. A 6-burner range. The kind of number that made my own kitchen manager's salary look modest by comparison. I remember the exact second it landed. I was holding a serving spoon over a bowl of mashed potatoes, my cousin's laugh still hanging in the air. And something in my chest went very still and very cold, like a door quietly closing somewhere deep in a house. I didn't say anything. That was my first mistake. My second mistake, though I didn't understand it as a mistake yet, not for a long time, was that instead of saying something, I went home that night and opened a blank spreadsheet on my laptop and started writing everything down. The requests kept coming after that, spaced out just unevenly enough that no single one, on its own, looked like a pattern. That's the part nobody tells you about slow betrayals they're engineered, whether consciously or not, to never look like anything at all until you step back far enough to see the shape of the whole thing. $1,800 for a car repair. $2,200 for just until the tax refund clears. $600 for what Priya described as Marcus's work trip, which I only later learned, from photos posted by a mutual friend, had actually been a family vacation to Sedona. Every request arrived, wrapped in the same warm, easy phrase, delivered like a hand on my shoulder. You know family takes care of family, Dana, she said it so lightly. Every time, as though the words themselves did the work of erasing the number attached to them, as though naming it family made it stop being math. By the 18-month mark, that number was $31,400. I know it precisely because I have that spreadsheet open in front of me right now, and I have looked at it more times than I can count. The way you press a bruise to make sure it's still there. Here's the thing about the cruelty. Though it was never loud, it never announced itself as cruelty. It came dressed as closeness, as intimacy, as the ordinary texture of being loved by someone. At my nephew's christening that spring, Priya arrived in a brand new Range Rover, still wearing paper dealer plates, and made a joke in front of the whole extended family, aunts, uncles, my grandmother in her wheelchair by the punch table, about how I must be swimming in bakery money these days. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because the alternative was standing up, in front of my aunt's good china and my grandmother's careful smile, and explaining that the down payment on that Range Rover had come partly, quietly, invisibly, out of my own payroll account. I laughed instead. I have gotten very good over the years at laughing instead. My employees noticed before my family ever did. Teodoro, my kitchen manager, a quiet man who'd worked beside me since our very first month in business, started leaving printed account summaries on my desk without a word of commentary attached. He never once asked me about them. He didn't need to. I think he understood, long before I let myself understand it, exactly what he was looking at. There was a night, about 2 years in, when I stayed late alone doing inventory in the walk-in cooler, counting bags of flour under the fluorescent lights, and I realized my hands were shaking, not from the cold, though the cold gave me a convenient excuse to pretend that's what it was. I was doing math I already knew the answer to, and some part of me had started to feel less like a business owner and more like a hostage to a phrase 4 words long. The turning point, when it finally came, didn't come from Priya at all. It came from Marcus, and I don't think he ever meant for it to happen the way it did. He called me on a Wednesday evening, sounding oddly formal, asking if I would be willing to confirm something for a loan application. They were putting together a second property this time, an investment condo near the waterfront. He needed a short letter from me verifying that the money I'd given them over the past 3 years had been a gift, not a loan, so it wouldn't complicate their debt-to-income ratio with the underwriter. A gift. I asked him to send over the draft letter so I could look it over before I signed anything. I told myself I was just being careful. I didn't yet know how careful I was about to need to be. What landed in my inbox 20 minutes later wasn't a short letter. It was an entire loan packet, apparently forwarded to the wrong email thread by mistake bank statements, an income summary, correspondence with the mortgage broker. And buried in the attachments, an internal spreadsheet Priya had built for herself. Not mine. Hers, a running ledger of every dollar she had ever pulled from relatives over the years, organized not by amount owed, but by a column she'd labeled in a small, tidy font Sources. My name appeared on that spreadsheet 9 separate times. Next to my name, in a column marked Notes, she had written a single sentence, casual as a grocery list, Dana won't push back. Easy. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after I read that. Not because I didn't understand what it meant. I understood it completely, immediately, in a way that felt almost physical, like a hand closing around something in my chest. I sat there because I needed a moment before I let myself feel the full size of it. Easy. 8 years of being the one who covered, who lied smoothly, who transferred money without paperwork because contracts between family felt like an insult. Reduced to a single word in a spreadsheet cell, in a font she probably hadn't even thought twice about choosing. I want to tell you I felt rage first. I didn't. not right away. What arrived instead was something quieter and much colder, the specific, clarifying stillness of finally seeing, in full daylight, the shape of something you'd only ever felt moving around you in the dark. I thought about my 11 employees, about Teodoro's silent printouts, about every just this once that had, in fact, never once been the last time. I thought about my mother, working 2 jobs so I could have violin lessons I never asked for, and how she used to say, without any bitterness at all, that some people give and some people take. And the trick of life was learning which one you were dealing with before it cost you too much to find out. I made a decision at that kitchen table, and it was not to call Priya and scream at her, however much some smaller, more exhausted part of me wanted to. Screaming would only give her a story to tell afterward Dana had a meltdown. Dana's always been sensitive about money. Dana never understood how family really works. I knew with total certainty that she would find a way to make my anger the story instead of her spreadsheet. So I decided to do what I have always done best. I decided to fix something. Just not, this time, in the direction anyone would expect. Over the next 11 days, in the hour after closing each night, I built a folder. Every bank transfer, every text message where she'd asked for money, every email, every receipt organized, dated, totaled. I told myself at the time that I was building a record, not a weapon. I still believe that was true. But I won't pretend I didn't understand, on some level, exactly what a record like that could become in the right hands at the right moment. I also learned something else from that misdirected loan file. Almost as an afterthought, buried in the paperwork, the closing date for their new investment condo fell in the same week as Priya's company's annual gala. Priya worked as a mid-level manager at a wealth advisory firm, and this year, the loan file mentioned in passing. She'd be introducing the keynote speaker in front of the firm's executives, senior partners, and a room full of actual paying clients. The family, naturally, had been invited too. Priya loved an audience. She always had. I didn't confront her before the gala. I let her have her stage every last minute of it. I brought exactly one thing with me that night, a single sealed envelope, addressed to her, tucked into the inside pocket of my blazer. I hadn't come to embarrass her in a room full of strangers. I'd come with a specific moment in mind, one I'd learned about only because of Marcus's misdirected email during the cocktail hour right after the keynote. Her firm planned to publicly announce her promotion to senior advisor, a promotion built in part on a personal narrative she'd apparently rehearsed for the announcement about financial discipline and trustworthy client relationships. I'd actually heard her practice that exact phrase once, in the car, months earlier, without a trace of irony in her voice. I waited. I drank a glass of sparkling water I didn't taste. I watched her stand at the podium in a navy dress I didn't recognize, thanking her firm, thanking her mentors, thanking briefly, generically her family, for everything. I waited until the applause had settled and people were lining up to shake her hand, glasses of champagne catching the light, and then I walked over, smiling the same smile I'd worn my whole life in rooms like that one, and asked if I could borrow her for just 1 minute, privately, by the coat check. "I have something for you," I said, "about the condo financing letter." I watched her face change the way the surface of a pond changes when a stone breaks it a small disturbance at first, rippling outward slowly, reaching much further than it looked like it would. I handed her the envelope. Inside was a single printed statement, a full accounting of every transfer over 3 years, totaling $31,400, alongside a printed copy of her own spreadsheet, the one with my name in the easy column, highlighted in a short, calm letter stating that I would not be signing anything characterizing those funds as a gift, and that I expected a formal repayment schedule in writing going forward. I told her, quietly, that I wasn't doing this to punish her. I told her I had 11 employees whose livelihoods depended on that account staying solvent, and that I had finally understood, after 8 years, that family takes care of family had only ever run in one direction between us. She tried, at first, to laugh it off, the same easy laugh I remembered from the christening, the Range Rover, 100 small humiliations before that one. "Dana, is this really the place?" "You picked the place," I said. "I'm just here." Marcus found us a few minutes later, drawn over by whatever he could read in her posture. I don't know exactly what he'd already begun to suspect on his own, but I watched something settle into his face the moment he saw the folder in her hands, a kind of tired, quiet recognition, like a man finally seeing. In good lighting, a crack in the floor he'd been carefully stepping over in the dark for years without letting himself look down. The loan for the investment condo fell through within 2 weeks. Once real documentation existed contradicting the gift characterization, the underwriter had questions Priya wasn't willing to answer with her own signature on federal paperwork. Word moved through the family the way it always does in families like mine, not from me. I never told the story to anyone who didn't already have a piece of it themselves. But Marcus talked to his sister. His sister talked to my aunt. By the following month, most of the extended family understood, in broad strokes, what had actually been happening for 3 quiet years. Priya didn't call to apologize. She called 10 days later to ask if I could please, for the family's sake, tone down how I was talking about all this. I told her, as calmly as I could manage, that I hadn't told a single story that wasn't already sitting in her own spreadsheet, in her own handwriting, under her own column heading. She hung up on me. We haven't spoken since, not the way we used to. It's been almost a year now. Priya and Marcus separated for 5 months before eventually reconciling. I don't know the details of what happened between them during that time, and I've been careful not to ask. She left her firm not long after the condo deal collapsed mutual, people said. Though I've learned that word tends to carry a great deal of quiet weight in stories like this one. She repaid $8,000 of the 31 before the payments simply stopped arriving. Eventually, I hired a lawyer. Not out of any desire for revenge, but because I'd come to understand that a debt with no accountability behind it isn't really a debt at all, it's just a hope with a due date stapled to it. We're still working through the formal repayment now, the way it should have been structured from the very first transfer 8 years ago. We don't talk much these days. At my nephew's birthday party last spring, I saw her across the yard near the drinks table and she nodded at me. I nodded back. That was the entire conversation. It felt strangely like enough. I don't regret the folder. I don't regret keeping the receipts. If I regret anything, it's the 8 years before it all, those small, unrecorded generosities that quietly taught her, without either of us ever quite meaning for it to happen, that I would always be the easy one to ask. Here's what this whole experience taught me, and it's what I want to leave you with tonight. Being the fixer in your family isn't a compliment, even when it's dressed up like one. It's a role someone else quietly assigns you, usually because it's convenient for them. And you are never obligated to keep playing it just because you happen to be good at it. You don't have to raise your voice to hold a boundary. You don't have to burn anything down to be taken seriously. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do, the only thing that actually works, is simply keep the receipts. literally or otherwise, and let the truth delivered calmly. Do the work that anger never could. If someone in your life has ever told you, in some version or another, that family takes care of family, I'd ask you to sit with that phrase for a moment. Ask yourself honestly whether that care has ever actually moved in both directions, or whether it's only ever been a door that opens one way. If this story reminded you of someone in your own life, I'd genuinely love to hear about it in the comments below. And if you want more stories like this one, go ahead and subscribe. There's always another quiet reckoning waiting.
आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। मुस्कुरा के बात करती हो, आदतें खराब करती हो। ना दिखो बेताब लगता हूँ, आशिक बेहिसाब लगता हूँ। ऐसा नशा है तेरे दीदार का, आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। जिंदगी हसीन लगती है जब ये जालिम प्यार होता है। सांसों में सांस आती है जब तेरा दीदार होता है। नखरा है ऐसा मेरी सरकार का, आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। नखरा इसका टॉप पर आती है टिकटॉक पर, नैनो से है नैन मिलाती, लड़कों के है दिल जलाती, पिंडी में है चर्चा इसका, मीरा जितना खर्चा इसका। मैंने बोला इसको मेट्रो में बिठाऊंगा, कैपिटल ले जाऊंगा, F7 भी घुमाऊंगा, मोनाल भी दिखाऊंगा, सेंटोरस भी ले जाऊंगा। आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। मौसमों की बेकरारी को आजमा के जान जाओगी, हिज्र की आजमाइश में एक दिन पहचान जाओगी। कहना है मेरे दिल बेकरार का, आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार